I'm hoping my engine isn't overly loud, but there's no way I could be in here doing this right now with the car turned off because it's cold. Hi everybody, my name's Kay. You're watching Amidst the Gray, and today I will attempt to make a few of my decks feel a little less lonely through my video response to Logan from Lark and Legend and the tag Deck Reconnect for 2023. Let's do it. I have so many videos that I want to make right now. It's ridiculous. And honestly, I'm a little bit overwhelmed. I started making a list. And that's the thing. With this kind of thing, once I start making lists, like I can't stop. You know, everything just like comes out all at once, and then I just look at it and am like, there's no way I'm going to be able to make all of these, you know, and there are so many I want to do this month just because they're relevant for this month or they're relevant for the transition into 2023. This tag really caught my attention because it's kind of a piggyback on some of the reflection that I had done during my deck inventory that I filmed and posted, and how I was going through all of my decks, and there were certain ones I just had in my hand and I was just like, oh, I need to work with this deck more, or I haven't touched this in ages. I really need to work with this deck more next year, or even maybe later this year. So I thought I would bump this one up the list a little bit just because it's very relevant for kind of where I'm at and some content that I've already done. The premise of this tag is to basically assess your library, your collection, what you already have, but you don't intend to get rid of, you know, anytime soon, and see which of those decks you're really kind of feeling the pull to kind of maybe reconnect with, reestablish that relationship. And yeah, just go through and see what comes up. My list was kind of surprising. I went through my LibB and I came up with 6. 5 out of the 6 are tarot and 1 is oracle, which is kind of surprising considering I think I tend to work with tarot as a whole more than oracle because I use oracle for kind of specific purposes. So to have 5 tarot on that list and only 1 oracle was a bit of a surprise, but that's what I came up with. So I will be presenting 5 tarot, 1 oracle for your viewing pleasure. First Tarot Up is a deck that came into my life during the summer of 2022. I worked with it loads for a few weeks and then haven't really touched it since, and that is a shame. And I really want to pick this deck up more in 2023 because there's just so much here. This is the Tarot of the Abyss by Anna Turian, published by US Games. This is RWS inspired, but it offers something a little bit different, particularly in the suit of swords. There are alternate cards for the 3 and 10 of swords, both of which I ended up using. The alternate 3 depicting that sort of mental and creative expansion, and the 10 just assimilating the wisdom obtained in the suit and transcending that particular mental cycle and going on to the next one. This is a beautiful tarot. There's so much here, so much to pick apart. And I think the lack of color makes that process even more kind of intense and unique. Tarot of the Abyss by Anna Turian. This next deck I've had for quite a while, and I've worked with it a lot, but I barely touched it in 2022. And when I did my deck inventory and I had it in my hand, I felt like I missed it, which is interesting because this is the Aquarian Tarot. It's a classic. It's very RWS based. But for me, the strength of this deck lies in the intimacy of the close-ups. And I love that moon card. It's one of my favorite moon cards. The close-ups of the quartz and some of the figures. It's a little more up close and personal. And I have a little bit more of an intimate relationship with this deck than I would say I do with any other RWS Big Step, with the exception of maybe the Morgan Greer. This is the standard mass market edition from US Games. One of my purchase intentions for 2023 is to acquire a vintage copy of this deck. I think that would be really, really great. Once again, this is the Aquarian Tarot by David Palladini, published by US Games. This next deck was saved out of my maybe box that I had from my recent deck inventory. I had it in the maybe as a potential to rehome, but when I reviewed my maybe box the next day and I had this in my hand, I couldn't let it go. I needed to keep it for a while. This is the Tarot of the Spirit by Pamela and Joyce Eakins, I believe, and also published by US Games. This deck has something different to offer. There's an air of Thoth in this, and it's not like a direct comparison, or like a replica or a clone, or even really maybe even inspired by Thoth. I don't actually even know. That's what I'm going to find out hopefully next year. But for me, there is that element of Thoth in this deck, and I intend to do a study of Thoth next year, and I thought it might be interesting to do kind of a comparative study between the Thoth and this deck. That's an idea I'm playing around with for next year. This next tarot is by far one of the coolest and most interesting decks in my collection. Not just a pip deck. It's like across the board. It is just so neat and interesting. This is the Czech Tarot of Lesenix, or the Lesenikův Tarot, published by Trigon. They are a European-based company. This copy was published in 2001. The majors are inspired by Worth. From what I understand, Lesenik was a student of Worth's and took inspiration from that for the majors. There is that Kabbalistic reference there for the majors in the corner. The minors are very Pip Marseille styled minors, but they are different. The embellishments are different. There's not a lot of information about this deck, but I have high hopes because apparently they republished a new edition with an English guidebook. The guidebook, the little white book I have, is all in Czech, and so I'm hoping to get my hands on that English resource. And this deck has one of the coolest types of cardstock I've ever had in my hand. It's very waxy and interesting. There's the publisher right there. Trigon published 2001. I believe the new edition was published in 2019. Czech Tarot of Lesenik. Of all of the decks in this video, this one for me, I'm actually the most excited about kind of reconnecting with. This is the Symbolic Tarot of Worth. I'm on a Worth kick lately. I've recently kind of gotten back on the Worth bandwagon, and I'm doing some exploration with that. This is a Lo Scarabeo deck. The majors are very typical of Worth majors. There's a nod to the Hughes Picard Ace of Cups right there, but the rest of the minors are very pippish. But what I like most about this deck is that the minors have a direct reference to the corresponding major. So here we see the Seven of Swords with the Charioteer, the head, right there in the middle. And for me, that's really important. And there is the Four of Swords with a direct reference to the Emperor. That major to minor trickle down energy, this death card cracks me up. I love it so much. That trickle down energy from the major to the minors is really, really key in how I read. And I just want to dig into that a little bit more with this deck. And I'm very, very excited to do so. Once again, this is the Symbolic Tarot of Worth, and it is a Lo Scarabeo deck. And now for the one and only Oracle. And believe me when I say the love-hate relationship I have with this deck is real. This has been in my timeout box, I don't even know how many times, but every time I go and check my timeout box just to see what's there, this is one of the first decks I end up pulling back out. And I figured out what it is with me and this deck. And because I figured this out, my intention for working with it in 2023 is going to be totally different. This is The Sacred Rebels by Alana Fairchild, and the art, I believe, is Autumn Sky Morrison. Some of the postures in these cards are so powerful and profound, and I've done a lot of work with just how the figures are postured and in this deck. But my main issue, and I figured out, it's the guidebook. It's the guidebook and Alana Fairchild's writing. I just don't get on with the way she writes. And it's nothing against her. It just doesn't resonate with me. So my intention is to pretty much ignore the guidebook completely next year and work with the art alone. This is by no means an exhaustive list, at all, because I have several decks I would like to work with more deeply next year. But these 6 were the ones that just kind of stood out the most as far as decks that I would kind of like to reestablish that bond and relationship with, and maybe even dedicate entire journals to. That would be a thing. But I'm excited, and tags like this I really find valuable just because they make me think about what I have in different ways. And that's kind of a path that I'm on at the moment, and I think will be for most of next year, is what do I have? How haven't I used it? What are the possibilities? This is like I'm thinking outside the box regarding my library and what it can, because in the end, for me, these are tools, and what can these tools do for me, and how can I work with them? And I'm just really excited to get that process going. So thank you to Logan for this tag. It was very thought-provoking and inspiring, and I found it very useful and helpful. And I hope maybe you got something out of this, and maybe some of you will do a VR as well. So that's it, I think, for this video. Until my next one, take care and be well.